Welcome to the June 17th Jail and Zones production user call. We have Philip, Jan, DCH, Mark, Dan, Adrian, and myself, Michael, so far. And Dave made a point that memtest, I guess not x86, is not parallelized on ARM64, but Poudriere made a great memory tester finding things that would explode super quickly. I will push this topic down a little bit. BSDCan finished on Saturday, arguably Sunday for some, because, hey, there were quite a few people in the airport. Jan, you had a comment that the streams are still available. What was that handle? Or maybe we should have a link.
Let me get the link for you. I will
Okay, you
drop
get
it
the
in
link,
chat.
and I'll say it's a new tradition to provide the entire full day or full chunk of various rooms, and then they will get separated into nice little videos. So this allows people to have a pretty quick experience watching as much as they can and as close to real time as possible. So thank you for that link. I'll drop it in the chat. Any other comments on BSDCan? The postmortem will take weeks. The team has been amazing about reimbursements, like often having them prepared and discussed like before they got on their plane. It's pretty insane. Great team. Go team. And Dan, thank you for all of your nearly 2 decades of help with that. Well, 2 decades, I'll say.
You're welcome.
Anything else on BSDCan? Go ahead, Dave.
Live stream, because it was great to be able to participate in the Dev Summit remotely and all the other stuff. So
what was your number one chat feedback mechanism? Because with so many available, it's like, well, is it YouTube comments? Is it IRC? Is it Dev Summit chat? You tell me.
Absolutely IRC.
Oh, of course.
I don't do YouTube stuff, so I don't have
Okay.
I don't have an account.
Cool.
I'm going to keep it that way.
Jan, what was most effective for you?
Once someone was reading, the IRC was most useful.
Oh,
but
okay.
the AV team was sometimes easier reachable via the YouTube chat because they were watching that themselves for quality control.
Cool.
The metrics channels were barely used.
Oh, good to know. Okay. You see, matrix was quiet. Okay. Yeah, between Signal Matrix, Telegram, all the things, it's tricky. Cool. Well, and I'll say it here. Thank you, AV team. You did great. Awesome, awesome. And historic note, this was the very first BSDCan streamed entirely off of ATEM nifty streaming devices. Thank you, Dave, for help with a decimator. Thank you, everyone who's donated to all that. There were two, well, actually, it was all SDI cameras, 2 of which were new nifty Blackmagic Studio Minis. G2s, of course. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I'm sure the follow-up will take place in various forms, possibly on this call. Philip, you joined the call last week, if I'm not mistaken, and I apologize. It was just me in a hallway just kind of doing noises, but hopefully it's a productive call. What you got? Disaster recovery.
Well, I just bought some new hardware to replace or update some old servers, or really just one to give it a try. So it's a dev server that is probably 8 or 10 years old. And I'm going to use something that's a little bit more power efficient. So, obviously a whole lot more power per watt and so I was going to use this as an opportunity to test a disaster recovery process. And so I just started looking into what does it look like if I have a 2 watts per watt. Jan, that was pretty funny. Okay, so basically I have always backed up ZFS pools for all the jails. So everything's on jails and everything is on ZFS. And certainly it's really trivial to be able to get the files back. But what I want to look at is how do I bring up a whole new system that has all these jails or that pulls in all the jails only using the disaster recovery type backups that are offsite or, in my case, both offsite and on another machine in the same physical room. And I haven't really done a whole lot of research on what's the best way to do that. So I was going to see if there was a standard way or if there's any insight or citations, because I've seen some things what's the best way to do it? And yeah, these are automated backups. They're just being pulled into, at this point, it's a TrueNAS core original one. And I've only tested the restore of the data, not of the operating system. And so that's what I want to see. How do I get the restore of the operating system level rather than what I've normally done is a reinstall from, a new ISO and just pulled in the jails from there, and that's worked. But I'm looking at what's the best way to, bootstrap it from the backups, or is it still the best way to start with a current FreeBSD release ISO and then pull in the jails like I've done before? So
Super
that's
quick points before the others jump in. One, are you sticking with TrueNAS or you're jumping to FreeBSD? And of course, are you doing a version update, which will probably nuance that? And I'll shut up.
well, the TrueNAS, it's the only purpose of the TrueNAS is to be a ZFS backup. So it's not in any part
so
of
that's
the
not the
dev system.
primary.
No, it's just
okay.
storing the data. So I'm going to pull it from that, but it's not part of the picture as far as the dev server. The dev server is just a plain old FreeBSD 14.2. That's all that it is. And then the new one is going to be also FreeBSD 14.2.
Got it. Okay,
So
sticking on one
14.3, I
version.
hope.
Yeah, 14.3 is out, by the way, but I can.
yes, but right now it's 14.2.
Got it.
I mean, it'll be 14.3. So I'll do the updates, but that's what it is currently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it could be a 14.3 to 14.3. So we're not looking at changing versions. We're just looking at if the only source of data is the backup, the zpool backups,
Mhm.
and what is the most resilient way to take those backups and bring them to a brand new system that may or may not be identical. It's probably not in my case. In fact, it's not, but it's going to be similar enough. We're going to stay with the same, AMD 64-bit platform. We're not going to like ARM or something like that. And we're going to stick with whatever the same version is, going from the old to the new. So we're not going to try a version change in the mix.
I'll throw in a short answer. Send it, check your work. Okay, go ahead, Jan. You have your hand up.
Yeah, the easy answer for me is to keep the jail host as bare bones as possible. Just a clean FreeBSD installation, install what I need to run Ansible, then provision. So that I don't have anything worth saving there. If the tool dies or is completely corrupted, and that does have happened, I just create a new server and then recover the backups into jails, and I don't have to deal with the physical stuff inside the jails.
Okay, so we're not worrying about the host operating system, which is kind of that's the process I've used so far of I just reinstall the host and then pull in the jails.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you have automation to kind of provision a jail from a backup, you're probably fine.
At this point, I don't.
If you have two servers, it's maybe a good idea to kind of stop the jail on the source system and then recover on the other server if you have two servers, so that you kind of use your backups as migration, just doing some maintenance window, so that you actually have run your recovery process. As I cheekily put in the chat, there are two types of backups, automated and none. And there are two types of recovery, tested and none.
Yeah, right now I'm at the backups are automated, and I haven't done an automated recovery. I've only pulled in a jail from one system to another, and it sounds like that's going to continue to be the best way.
Unless you are mangling your CFS replication somehow, for example, rewriting stuff, suppressing some properties and so on, you should be able to just do the same migration workflow from the replica back to your recovery system.
Okay. Yeah, so that's what I think I'll Okay, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just going to
As
do is
long,
I won't worry about the host operating system. It'll just be a reinstall
Mhm.
and pull in the jails. So that's what I had planned, and that's what I've kind of done in the past, but I haven't done a lot of migrations. So I'll just treat it as a regular migration, uh, installing the host OS from ISOs and then bringing the jails in after that.
it, how you install the
Once
host OS doesn't matter at that point, as long as you don't have anything you need preserved on the host OS.
one
Just
small
shouldn't take
note
you too much
there.
effort, and it shouldn't be too fragile. So if you have anything non-trivial to do, maybe you want to automate that.
And I think one of the things I'm going to learn with this is the Ansible side, because I haven't used Ansible before. I'm familiar that it exists, but I haven't done anything with it. So I think that's going to be the tool that I'm going to try learning uh, to do the install and configuration so that the
So
base will be a standard platform.
what
I can
makes
see all my
Ansible especially useful in this case is that it does not rely on any service to be running, no agent. If you can use it in push or in pull mode, so either you manually clone your playbook repository and role repository and just run it locally, or you run it with Ansible pull if you're confident enough. But you don't have to set up a salt stack master and minion setup first before you can use it.
Okay.
yeah.
Super quick point. Sorry, Dave. Nest your data sets. You will thank yourself. Even if you have an unnecessary level of nesting, and I often have one letter pool and data set names, if you need to untangle it in some way, that's always helpful. And conversely, undoing something that's not nested is a big pain in the butt. There you go. That's it. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, it's really helpful if you keep your data set size down and split them where it makes sense. You don't want to end up like I with 200 terabyte data sets.
Yeah, these are pretty well focused that there's a jails data set, and then each jail, of course, gets its own separate data set.
Great. That's my
So
point.
yeah, that's relatively straightforward in the design, whether I've used a jail thing tool or just straight jails conf to set them up, that they all get their own data set because that's my backup plan and data migration plan.
Oh, come on. Dave, you had the floor.
Yeah. So two things. I will send you Phil my Ansible stuff, and you can crib from it liberally, or come back and ask any questions you like. So I'll do that over email. And the main thing in my world is right from the beginning, everything's been designed with no single point of failure. So migration for us is take one server out of production, just destroy it, deploy a new server, and then run Ansible and wait. And eventually it'll realize it has no data and it has databases, and it sucks everything down. And eventually HA proxy goes, it's ready to be used. But that model doesn't work for everyone. You kind of got to plan to it. But in general, what I put in chat there, and someone's already stolen for the notes, is we back up three things: the bootloader and rcconf and some other stuff under user etc local, and a couple of other things under VARDB that are specific to our stuff with that have cryptographic keys for each server. And that's kind of like the identity of each server. So when we deploy a new one, if I'm migrating, I just deploy a new server, steal the boot environment off the last boot environment off the old server, drop it in the new one, and then there's like two files, usually etcconf with networking, that need to be dropped in, maybe change some interface names, and that's it. It's pretty quick. And that's one of the really nice things about FreeBSD, is that all of that, there's nothing special about each server. There's no fancy config files or anything. It's just all in one place. And then the server comes up, and in my world, we just have to make sure HA proxy is off, because if HA proxy is on, it will start trying to route traffic. And then after that, we've got an empty server. It has all the same stuff as the original one, but it's empty. There's a whole bunch of stuff in zroot/jailed, blah, blah, blah. And that's the persistent data for each application. So if we take a database like Postgres, you're going to have, what is it, VarDB Postgres / Postgres version, and that's one parent data set under ZRoot jailed with nested data sets underneath it for things like log files, write ahead logs that we want to keep separate. But those can all just be scooped up and shoveled around with ZFS send or rsync, whatever's more convenient for the data. And at that point, the server has the jails, the same identity as its predecessor. We then run Ansible, and Ansible just goes, oh, okay, there's a jail. Okay, you've got some data to mount into it from ZRoot jailed. And it just starts up. And that's worked reliably now, that approach for, crumbs, like a decade. I guess we've been doing this for a decade. And sometimes we're moving providers because of money. Sometimes it's network proximity. Sometimes it's because the provider is shut down. Thank you, Equinix, for stabbing me in the back. And that process works really well. And then finally, once the data is across and Ansible is there, start up HA proxy and then change a little bit of DNS stuff so it's back in the pool. And that works very, very nicely. But the overall thing is backup, ZFS, and using Ansible to provision the stuff in advance of having it slotted back into production. And that works pretty well.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to work on the Ansible part of it, and I'll look for the thing that you sent.
Cool. Anything else on that topic?
No, I have about 2 weeks, a week and a half before the new equipment is going to be here and ready, so I have time to start on the old dev system.
Dave, was that you on VNet and Podman? Okay, Mark, go ahead.
No, I think it was Mark.
Oh, that was Mark.
So-
Okay, great. Then, Mark, you have the floor.
All right,
You can
so
start right there if you like.
all right, with the Podman suite, I would like to see Podman Composed added to that suite. Now, with that, I've been kind of going down this rabbit hole, and I've been thinking, like, granted, I may be missing some information here, but I've also been thinking of, like, really, we probably should be finding a way, especially to build images quickly, and reliable and more consistent. We probably should start integrating the port system. So, like, say Nginx, we can do a build the image from there. Now, going back to Podman Compose, I'm thinking, like, we could, in the user local etc containers, we could add like Podman Compose files with the category and product, at least a template, so that way somebody could go in and have a config and ready to use. And those files could also be put in the ports build. Granted, we have a generic base image that we start from, that we pull from, and then we would also be able, when we build these images, we could either, if the architecture is not going to change, it's going to whatever native architecture it is, we can pull the image. Build the artifacts on the local machine and then pull those artifacts into the container. So that way, actually, I'll get to that after my second, but then we should also have a way of building, especially for multi-architecture images, building everything from scratch. So that way, for multi-arch. And then, let's see, build inside container. And then for, say, any other port, we can have a generic way to containerize it to create a base image. Now, we don't, especially since we don't have a massive repository to put everything, but if we say, for whatever reason, somebody wants to do a container that's, FAAS, function as a service. For whatever reason, they want VLC in a container, and they're using VLC somehow, some way. create that image with VLC, and then using from in one's own custom build, use that image with VLC and do whatever they want with VLC. Let's see about what I don't. At the same time, with a base image, we could also have generic options. So like Philip here brought up Ansible, and it's like, well, we could have standard options to do whatever standard behaviors consistently, like across the board. Granted, yes, you should, for certain things, would expand on that, but it was just like, you know what, maybe we can dump in a generic data structure and the application knows how to pick it apart, and away we go. And that is my brain dump right now.
It's a couple of things. I think having something like whether it's Podman's Quadlet or Docker Compose or whatever is useful. I just don't know anyone who's tried it yet. It might actually just work already. I don't know.
I've actually been trying it. The networking has been a bit of a pain. Like I can definitely get to the private IP.
Yeah.
I've been a bit busy with other things, but I've been meaning to try and set a static IP within there, but within it, so that it always comes up as a consistent 10 dot whatever. Now I've been trying to go through the documentation to get CNI going. For a moment, somehow, some way, I did get Docker Compose to actually port forward for a moment. I don't know if that was a fluke or what, but granted, even if this stuff isn't already immediately available, it's on the. I would imagine it's on the roadmap to get this working.
Yeah. So at the moment, and I mean literally at the moment, like last week, I've been looking at after talking with Jan at doing a custom CNI plugin. So the number one thing I need is I've got a bunch of jails today. Want to move the containers. The build part is sorted, but the networking is not. I have quite a complicated network setup, and I can't just YOLO everything into containers and then have it work. I'm going to have to migrate in little stages. And so for that, I'm looking at a custom network CNI plugin for that. But as someone noted, it's all VNet jails. You can't not do VNet jails. So I'm probably still going to have a bridge with VNet jails. And I've got to figure out if and how I can sort of decompose the networking stuff. It's possible to make a container that has a statically assigned IP for it, but it's still going to be a VNet IP. Just complicated. For me, it's very complicated. It doesn't work well.
With
get around it.
You also have the option of using the host, and it's just whatever ports the container exposes just goes right up. So even the port forwards don't even really matter because you've effectively forwarded everything.
Yeah, at least for me, I can't do it at the moment. I've got all of these services that assume there's a clustered database and a back end, everything over an overlay network. Not ideal. But yeah, one of these Podman-like tools will probably come across once we've got the other pieces sorted. The next big piece for me is networking. This is later this year. This feels like to me, unless it works out of the box and someone else has a go with it, this feels like to me like a September, October thing. I have been looking at hooks in Podman. So with hooks, you can run arbitrary tasks at various points. Just like with jails, we got exec created, exec release, these sort of points where you can put hooks in jail.conf. You can have hooks in the Podman suite as well. And I wanted to try and get it to attach a ZVS data set. And it's also occurred to me at that same point, I could also apply arbitrary networking, possibly, but I haven't got that to work yet.
All right. Yes. So, that explains a lot of the issues I've had.
Yeah. So you're not the only person working on this. Discord is the it has appeared to be the place where the most people are chatting about this. And there's another guy down in South Africa, Breton, who's done some really cool stuff already. He's further ahead than anyone else I know. I will drop a couple of links to his awesome things here shortly.
Yeah. Actually, can you drop the link for this this doc here so I can copy and paste my little blurb here?
Yeah.
I rambled through. But yeah, I'd also like to, like, as I mentioned, like add on to ETT containers with either, well, ultimately a usable podman compose or some form of compose to immediately go. And then I think further on, we're probably going to want to create some tooling to help manage this.
Yeah, it's very exploratory at the moment. Just sort of people trying things and going, "Oh, how does that work?" Yeah, it hasn't really all settled down into a nice sort of state yet. Cool. I've got to drop off for a bit. Sorry, back in a few minutes. Yeah.
So from a quick look, the problem is that Podman doesn't give you full control about the jail creation parameters, and some of them cannot be modified after jail creation. Like you cannot go from VNET to alias networking or inherit or whatever. So because you are not in full control of the jail creation, you can only modify that which can be modified after creation. And if you modify too much, you may break assumptions in the Go code.
So is Podlet a pretty popular tool?
No idea.
Hence my question. Well, good luck, Mark. It sounds like you've got some homework to do. Jan, on a related topic, VNet is a hard requirement for Podman on FreeBSD?
The way Podman is currently ported to FreeBSD, you cannot deselect VNet. It's not that it could not be made to work. So if you were able to specify use alias networking and then have your own CNI provider configure the alias IPs, that is technically feasible and probably not much code to change for someone who knows where the right changes have to go. But it doesn't mean that it's something you can just come and do by just asking for it and then do it yourself. You probably have to change the code and either fork it or submit patches upstream and hope that they are accepted. Doug wanted it to feel like it does on Linux, where they are using the Linux equivalent to VNet with network namespacing. As far as I know, Linux doesn't really have something like FreeBSD alias jails. I guess you could create a Linux container without a network namespace, which means it would inherit the host network stack, which is just like you can do it on FreeBSD to specify a jail with IP4 equals inherit, IP6 equals inherit. But unless you're nesting, that's seldomly what you want.
Okay. Dave has a topic in the queue, but he has stepped away probably to put a kid to sleep or something. Other topics. Adrian, have we tickled anything in your mind while you've been listening in?
Nope, I'm just a fly on the wall.
Hello, fly on the wall. Missed you in Ottawa. I'm sure you'll be around.
I'll try to be there next year.
Cool. Let's see. Dan, any topics to add in? Ooh, and there's a honeyguide.eu. What are we looking at? I'll
Oh,
just throw those
I
in.
do have one question.
Yes, please.
I know that we've got PkgBase coming up soon.
Yes,
There's all
sir.
I've only been looking at, but listing in and out on this. How are we integrating with spinning up jails and podlets in this particular instance with PkgBase and packages? Like if I wanted to do this on Debian many years ago, I would run dbootstrap with a bunch of packages. I could add in my own packages on top of that and have the image get spat out at the end, so I wouldn't have to go craft manual stuff and then snapshot it like Docker. Um, how does that look in this new world? How can that look in 15?
How can it look?
Um,
Yeah, Jan has done some extensive work here, and I don't
so
want to
how
direct you
it
to the
can,
recordings, but yes, go ahead, Jan. You've got the floor.
yeah, if you want to do the topic justice, I recommend you look at the 1 hour session on FreeBSD 15 release
Uh-huh.
process during the Dev Summit on the recording available on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
I can try to get you the right offset.
I'll find it. It's
Uh,
okay.
It's on the BSDCan YouTube channel
Mhm.
under live streams. It hasn't yet been cut up into chapters and so on.
hmm
Um, really start from the beginning and then look at the schedule to guess the starting offset or just seek through it. I don't have a better answer right now.
But I mean, did that
The
cover?
short of it is that it's my understanding that people were a bit shocked to see what's still missing.
Okay.
So I'm using PkgBase in my home lab. It works well. Most of the kinks have been worked out. What's missing is tooling around it to make it easy to consume.
Right.
The packages exist, the upgrade handling works, but right now, apparently the goal is that FreeBSD update will get you to 15.0, but no patches, and then you're kind of expected to migrate to PkgBase or build from source.
So just as a note, I run PkgBase here as well. So in terms of the PkgBase kinks, I get it. I get that. I mean specifically from assembling jails.
So the installer should have should grow a usable PkgBase install for 15.0. And I assume this means the BSD install jail subcommand will also work with PkgBase.
Okay.
Which is one way to do it. The other ways I have figured out is you can create a minimal jail root directory with the X509 root certificate list, the code signing key from the project, and your DNS resolver, and then you can use package-j with PkgBase repository configured also inside the jail.
Uh-huh.
So you need like a dozen files copied in. And if you have the package-j can work on a persistent jail, which is so far effectively empty, and install the base system from inside the jail.
Okay.
If you ever want to update that jail, you have to give that jail the allow.changeflags permission, because otherwise it's the files protected with BSD flags cannot never be updated from inside the jail. You can only lose this restriction while you do the base system update, but I wouldn't bother with that pain.
Okay.
The other way I'm currently prototyping, which I like even more, is to have a kind of fake jail which doesn't run anything, which on first run fetches the base repository, decompresses the ZSTD compressed packages into an LZ4 compressed ZFS file system, builds a new repository, and then read-only mount that in the jail. The advantage is it's a lot faster to provision a fake jail, because you're using a local repository, you don't need any code signatures on it. So no code signatures to copy in, and because it's local, you also don't need any TLS certificate validation,
Right.
which also means you don't need that, and you also don't need network configuration
networking.
working
Yeah.
because no network again.
This
So
is
you can
exactly the rabbit
actually
hole that I
install
was
into.
hoping. I was hoping you or someone had gone down this rabbit hole of like, how do I provision a jail locally without having the tools magically require me to be on the internet to do random stuff? So
Yeah,
it's good to hear that you're.
I'm doing that as a hobbyist project. I cannot promise any deliverables.
I'm glad that you've been digging into it to start with. That's good. That's good. Thanks.
So yeah, the problem is that I did some quite unnatural things to my lab machine, patched the jail command to add the feature that if your jail configuration file to be included is executable, the jail command will then execute that configuration script and pass the standard output, similar to how an auto-mount dynamic map works, or an executable Ansible inventory, so that I can have little code snippets generating otherwise very tedious, redundant, boring stuff like a jail block including some wildcard or something.
Yeah.
So bearing a lead, Jan has kindly skipped over the ZFS provisioning, and it's actually the parallel discussions have resulted in fast cloning support, if I'm not mistaken, in ZFS, such that Jan is blasting out jails in like less than a second, or you can summarize that. But that's a whole ongoing discussion you can track in the calls and the minutes.
I don't want to take up. I don't want to take up any more time. Like, I'm glad that that's something that we can poke into post 15 once PkgBase is more polished and we've like shaved off the sharp edges in using it normally. I'll poke you and Baptiste and like have a bit more of a chat about what we can do in package management for setting up jails, because I really want to be able to create jails on the fly with like a set of base packages and then a set of pre-built packages for that particular jail's behavior, and then go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Give me a second and a minute or so.
It is very much the right question, and Jan has very much been exploring the deep bowels of it. So thank you both.
Thanks a lot, guys.
It's not super complicated. You make user share keys untrusted. You copy in the package config into like wherever it goes, and then you can just package install stuff. So it's maybe less.
Can I have the screen share for a moment?
Go for it. Yep. Here we go. Quick demo. I think it'll let you automatically jump on it, but I'll stop anyway. And Dave, welcome back. We can get to your VXLAN goodies.
Let me recite that to someone on the call recording has a chance to read. So what I've written is this unholy jail.conf as an example. The idea is that you specify which FreeBSD version you want, and then you subset the base system with a package remote query. So you start out with all of FreeBSD base, then you deselect the 32-bit libraries, the debug symbol files, the development headers, the kernel, because it's a jail. The bootloader, again, it's a jail. BSMMP, because it has an unfortunate dependency on the tests, which is 70 megabytes or so. Then the compiler and linker and debugger and ttrace and a few big tools to deal with fancy networking cards you are not managing from inside a normal jail. And I'm also omitting the rescue binaries because I can rescue the jail from the host if I have to. Or I can just install any of the parts I'm missing. So the installation, if you're doing it from inside the jail, is here automated directed that it will find out the right parent data set, create a single ZFS file system for the jail, create an at empty snapshot immediately if the file system is empty and doesn't have an at empty snapshot, so that you always have a snapshot to the empty file system so that you can roll back, but still have a common ancestor for replication, even if you want to go back to 0, so that you can at least force replicate. Then here it's doing the actual bootstrapping, so it creates the required directories. Then it creates the user and group database, because otherwise package complains when unpacking the tarballs that it has to rely on the numeric UID, GID in the package files and can't use a symbolic user and group name, which is annoying and just noisy. I'm indexing that because this is what it's about to be installed. There will not be any .package save files left over. Then I'm copying over basically the directory where all the trusted and untrusted root certificates are installed, and the directory with the symlinks as well. Those are relative symlinks, so they work correctly. Yeah. Then I copy the host just repository signing key. We don't have any revoked yet, but potentially we could have. I copy the resolve conf. Then I'm declaring the repository configuration. Next, I'm using tar because it is change root capable, so that I can safely copy the scratch directory, which contains symlinks, into the jail. So even if there was a malicious symlink, it would be only recreated by a change rooted tar process. Just a safety net here. Then I'm cleaning up my temporary directory I created in /temp on the host. Know that it has been copied over. And I'm creating a snapshot on the dataset. The next exit doc created, so it runs inside on the host, but uses package-j to jail attach the package process. First, I have to infer my right dataset again. Then I'm updating the repository once. Next, I'm fetching the packages, which have been, yeah, this is a very long line. Sorry about that. Yep. So I'm replacing all the tabs and new lines in the package query up here with spaces to make the query parser happy. Yeah. Fetching, once I know which packages are selected, I'm fetching them. Then I'm installing them inside the jail, or with package-j. And then once it's installed, I delete the package cache because that's basically the size of the user LAN with compression. And in the end, you get a jail which just bootstrapped itself completely from just this jail.conf file. And I will drop the link to this gist into the chat. That's one way to do it. A fancier way to do it is if I take the screen share, share, and select my terminal. Can you see my terminal?
Yes, sir.
Is that a useful resolution for all of you? Or should I make the text smaller, larger?
It's
Fine.
good.
Yes. Yeah.
You got a yes.
Good. So this is the fancy stuff I prototyped in 15. So as you can see, the jail was created. This is a jail created out of clones. The clones are kept read-only. Okay, now if I go into the jail.conf here, and maybe I'm changing it from tiny to small, so that I'm depending on a fuller set of base packages. And I start the jail, the automation kicks in again. And if we go back, you can see that it has noticed that, okay, the datasets exist, but then it tells me, oh, the clone has the wrong ancestor, and destroys the clone and creates a new clone. Yeah. And all of that is just tdsj.conf with shell.
Nice work.
So now if I do I go even more extreme, so that you.
So you've come to the right place, yes. Is that how deep do you want to go, Adrian? You want to go all day?
No,
for
that's
the
fine. I
11
mean, as I
part?
said, I don't want to take up
Oh.
a huge amount of time. The fact that the machinery is there, and I know that there's been machinery, normal jail machinery behind the scenes, which is great. Seeing the package-based stuff, integration stuff happen for jails for 15.
Whoop.
I
So
look forward to
was
beta testing more of that.
Cool.
yeah. What I just recreated the jail after I destroyed the dataset for it.
Nice.
And how long did that take?
You just saw it.
I know.
Yeah,
My point,
yeah.
we're emphasizing that point with a little emphasis
Uh,
spray.
Yeah, the half second or so is
Yeah,
the little automation generating all the jail.conf on the fly with tons of shell.
Nice.
No, not really. I want to rewrite some of that and see, because it will get the runtime back down to under half a second.
Basta. Yes.
I kind
Okay,
of set
Jan,
my threshold
Alright.
at 500 milliseconds.
Okay, well, wrap
Whatever
it
I'm
up and
aiming for.
Godspeed on that mission. Dave, you back? If so,
Yeah, I was on mute. Of course I
Awesome.
was.
Okay, that said, go ahead and discuss your goodies. And I've heard of NetBird.io for like 48 hours. I'm curious if you can slip that into your nifty research and goodies and questions. You have the floor.
So just quickly on PkgBase installs and for jails, I just posted a link which is 90% correct, but not quite correct. I've got to figure out exactly what I did wrong. It's from memory. But basically, if you just copy in package trusted keys and freebsd.conf, then you can run package to install package and then package to install PkgBase, and that's it. And if you use the Arden's trick of having a local cache of the PkgBase stuff, it's pretty fast. Yeah. Somewhere I've got to correct notes for this that I actually use already. I just don't know why I keep managing to lose it.
They're probably in the docs for what it's worth, just to a search on your copy.
Update the link in the doc with this correct thing. But it's basically that easy. Copy the keys, copy the config, bootstrap package, and then install your packages. Yeah. Overlay networks.
Yes.
So where is our notes again? I lost the page. I don't have a solution for this. I'm coming with problems today.
Oh,
so
no worries.
The guts of it is when I look at Podman. So with Podman, my big gain is it's very, very fast to build and deploy jails, more so than my my Ansible jail stuff. So I'm going to go down that route. A lot of the applications we build fall into two categories: stuff we deploy once and probably never change, and stuff we deploy every day, every few days, changing all the time. And in both of those cases, Podman makes it really nice to deploy it. It's one command to deploy the jail and set it up to run automatically. The only thing I don't have a good handle on is I haven't figured out how to attach a ZFS data set to the jail. So anything that's got a database on it needs persistent storage. And I've got a bunch of those. That's one problem. I'll probably figure that out with Doug in the next week or two. That's my next big problem. And the second one is networking. And I got some more suggestions from Doug today. He had a crack at it. The problem I have is I will start a container with some application in it that expects to talk to other containers that are not on this physical jail server. So there has to be some way of linking these things together that is both encrypted, not complicated to set up, and most importantly, amenable to having a known IP for the jail or the container. Let's call them containers because these are Podman ones. And I need the known IP because that way DNS can find things correctly. And it might be that the IP changes over time with each deployment. That's okay. I can wrangle my DNS to update records at deploy time. but ideally I would just stop and start containers and redeploy them that way. So I made a list of all of the different overlay networks we have available in FreeBSD, and there are a lot. And in no particular order, ZeroTier is what I use today. It works really nicely because it has this equivalent of a /80 IPv6, which is local to each server and is routed really, or not routed. It goes through very, very far, very quickly, but it's not routed on the server. It doesn't go off to a router. Not routed in the sense of traversing to a router. But I would need a VNet jail.
No, it is routed through a router.
Yeah, hang on, Jan. Questions at the end for this. Yeah. It doesn't go through a router, trust me. So the /80 on each server means I can use an alias jails, which is what I do currently. So it's really easy to set up, but it doesn't work for a VNet environment where every jail has its own VNet. So if I go down that path, I have to pay a lot more in licensing fees, which I don't like. It's kind of against how we roll. So that kind of is down, and I can't use the stuff I'm using today. WireGuard and VXLAN, really interesting because it's free and all built in to FreeBSD, so there's no extra stuff to deploy. The downside is it's not a mesh in the sense that you have to manage your IP addresses. You have to tell VXLAN how to get from one server to another. And in my case, the servers aren't all in the same data center, so I can't use a nice multicast. I've got to smear it out across with point-to-point links to build that mesh. So that's not so nice. And the final one is Nebula, which I haven't used yet, but looks like it does all of these things without the licensing fee, and it just recently got added to ports as well. Maybe other options I don't know about, but that's kind of the big three things. Is ZeroTier is what I use today, but I can't use it because of licensing. WireGuard and VXLAN looks really good, but needs point-to-point links, and Nebula looks like it promises all the things, but I haven't used it yet. So, yeah.
Have you heard of NetBird.io also for that list?
No.
Take a peek.
Yes, it's in ports as well from memory.
Oh, didn't even get that far.
Yeah.
So,
but I need more machines than it has, because every jail is a machine, and I don't even know how many jails I have anymore. I have lots of them.
Okay, time for questions? Yeah, let her rip,
first
Jan.
of all, each ZeroTier node is an IPv6 router for the 6-plane network.
But the traffic doesn't go through a router, so we're splitting
Not
hairs
for an external, but it is routed, not bridged, and it is forwarded to multiple hops. So I would call that routed.
Yeah, I will send you my config, and then you can write an essay about how I'm wrong.
But it depends on your definition of if doing routing makes a server a router, or if a router is a dedicated device which only does routing.
Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I've got. It looks like that.
Don't put rocket into my mouth. ZeroTier is not just bridged. But so the other thing is, you don't really need one license per jail because you have a /whatever 80 or whatever by default per host. So you basically only need one license or one subscription fee per ZeroTier client running on a jail host. There is no need for each jail to be its own ZeroTier node.
But it is if I have VNet jails, and that's the difference between today's system and
no.
Oh?
No, you can just route to the host via e-pairs.
Yeah. So in theory, yes, but in practice, that's an enormous amount of unnecessary scripting that I'm hoping to avoid.
Okay. And
so
the other thing,
you're right. You could do a loopback, bridges, e-pairs, and avoid it, but a lot of work.
The other thing you can do is you can run your own zero-tier controller. Then you're not bound by any licensing restrictions, but you lose your web UI for configuration.
Yeah, that's not really a problem. I think everything is by API.
Yep, exactly. If you run your own so-called
I haven't
Moon.
the controller yet on FreeBSD. I did it a few years ago, and this is like maybe 10 years ago, and it did not work on FreeBSD, but this will be like 10 zero-tier versions or 15 zero-tier versions ago. It might just run happily now.
If you want something layer 2-ish, maybe the way to go is some kind of encryption plus the VXLAN.
Yeah, the really big tricky thing is how Podman allocates IPs. It's got to be a VNet. It looks like it wants a bridge as well. I haven't worked further enough in it. Mark, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking this might start the beginning of the conversation of something more Kubernetes-like, a little bit back because of just,
oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, totally. It's exactly like a Kubernetes thing.
yeah. So this is, even though somebody already in chat has said no, not Kubernetes. Like, well, we can come up with our own damn thing.
Yeah.
Actually, with DFS and sending stuff to multiple servers, but it would be nice to actually have the feature of, say, I want X amount of containers running of this container running, all proxied, and if one node happens to have a power supply failure, it all rebalances. And all
Yeah, I think there's a middle ground between the full Kubernetes thing and what I need. Maybe my needs will change in the future, but for the moment, that is a lot more work than I need. Doug has been working on Kubernetes stuff, and I've been hearing now for a year that Doug's secret lab somewhere in the UK has FreeBSD Kubernetes, but no one knows where the secret lab is.
Yeah, well, at the same time, I am of no disillusionment that this is probably years in the making.
Yeah.
So if you adopt the HashiCorp stack, which is available on ports, yes, I know that IBM/Red Hat ate them, but it exists. So if you build on their tech stack, you have the whole control plane, which is basically the reconciliation loop and consensus, and they support multiple so-called task drivers. And there are like 2 generic jail ones and one for the pod jail manager.
Yeah.
And if you combine all that, you get your auto failover, rebalancing logic, and so on, with all the complexity that implies. PizzaMig has prototyped that with console and has it working. And it looks like they're running it in production from what they made available as basically pod templates.
Yeah, I think you kind of got to pick your battles. So number 1 battle is move my jails to Podman. Number 2 battle is figure out the least invasive networking migration to do that. And at the moment, that all comes down to got to have VNets, got to let Podman assign the IP addresses in a way that they always end up with the same assignments. I don't need to do the load balancing and redundancy thing yet because that's already taken care of in the architecture. Yeah.
So I would argue,
if I understand IPsec too.
So if I understand it correctly, the issue right now is that Podman on FreeBSD expects you to give it a bridge, and then it will create an e-pair for the VNet jail it creates, moves one end of the e-pair into the VNet jail, and adds the other as a member to the bridge. So you basically need, if you want to have layer 2 adjacency between your pods, you have to have something you can add to the bridge, which just works. So yes, you can now add all of the complexity that is the VXLAN, but as you already mentioned, what you're lacking across data centers will be the ability for multicast distribution to easily do learning. What you can do on FreeBSD is creatively repurpose different features in the bridge driver we have in kernel. So first of all, one of the under documented parts of the system is that if you add a GIF interface, so an IP tunnel to a bridge, the IP in IP tunnel suddenly becomes an Ether IP tunnel. So the tiniest way to encapsulate Ethernet and IP. Basically, you have a dedicated IP protocol. If you're encrypting anyway, you don't need port numbers because there's no intermediate system which depends on the port number. So why have a big UDP header in between and then the VXLAN header and so on, when you can just put your Ethernet frames you're encapsulating directly in an IP predicate. Of course, you surely don't want to have unencrypted Ethernet and IP tunnels between your multiple machines. But what you can have instead is the following. You configure IPsec in transport mode to always bidirectionally require transport mode IPsec processing incoming and outgoing for this IP protocol. Because nobody else will use this Ether IP protocol number. It's not going to clash with normal traffic. But it's very simple to write a two-class policy. Ether IP in require, Ether IP out require with strong swan, and then have strong swan just dynamically dial the session keys for you. The nice thing is if you have fancy Mellanox NICs, you can actually use their IPsec offloading for line weight IPsec handling, so that you're unloading you think it needs a Mellanox X, what is it? Connect X5 or on your, but yeah.
The Chelsea iPhones have it too, I think,
I don't know if it's hooked up because it's a vendor feature. I don't know if they were kind enough to implement it for the competition. But yeah. This kind of thing you could probably do 40 gig or faster IPsec without too much CPU overhead. But the tunneling stuff is so. But this leads you with a problem that you definitely don't want to do spanning tree in an overlay network. It would be insane. But what you can do is you can make all of the tunnels between your bridges marked as private bridge members. If you mark a bridge port member as private, the bridge will never flood a frame received on a private member to any other private member. The name private doesn't make a lot of sense for this behavior to me, but okay. This feature already exists. With configuring that on all your tunnels, you've broken the loop. So now you can disable a spanning tree between your tunnels because you will never loop, because you will never use another tunnel and there's no other connection. So if you have any flooded packet, it will go out through all tunnels. The bridge will then hopefully get an answer, learn the right forwarding entry, and from then on it's unicast traffic over only the correct tunnel. It doesn't scale to very high fan out because it is basically what in the VXLAN is source multicast replication, where you're kind of converting multicast to unicast. But it's the same thing that something like ZeroTier has to do. The other alternative would be to have some kind of centralized multicast replication service, go through some message broker or something, which, maybe it scales better to lots of groups, but it's slow and a lot of complexity. So if you only need redundancy between 3 or 5 data centers, go that way. It just would work. I've prototyped it. It's a bit tricky to configure, but it works quite well.
Could one of you kindly take the next few days to submit a EuroBSDCon talk on every single option that you've just described, regardless of jails, but throw in VMs and jails as a nice bonus, please,
It's
please,
like a whole
please.
conference. It's the whole conference
Yeah.
there.
Fine. I'll set up a new conference if
too
needed, but
many
this is the
unfinished
hot topic
projects.
from every darn conversation I have. So thank you. And if we need a dedicated one-off networking call to just explore what people are currently doing and what's theoretically being possible, I couldn't even keep up with you, Jan, and feel free to jump in where it says correct this. I couldn't even catch your things good. Fortunately, it's in theory recorded for humanity, but this comes up all the time.
I was at a call a couple of weeks ago, and it was halfway through the call between I realized this word that the guy was saying that I didn't understand was actually strong swan. And I was going, oh my God, now this whole thing starts to make sense.
Exactly.
I thought it was something else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Strong swan. Okay, so there's the camel Casey, Wacy, Gracie. Okay.
So I think I have two experiments to do. The first simple experiment is to see what the minimum amount of plumbing required is to have a WireGuard interface on the inside of a podman container. That's like experiment 1. Experiment 2 is to see if I set up a nebula mesh, for want of a better word, on FreeBSD, how does that compare to ZeroTier, and what sort of options do I have for making endpoints? And then the third experiment is, after doing those first two, have a crack at writing a CNI plugin that assigns the addresses for me. I'm really hoping that I can do something like create a WireGuard interface and then just pass that to Podman directly without having to have the bridge and things in the way.
Is there a caffeine product of choice that one can send your direction to just motivate this?
It's the main thing is just time. It's time versus other things. Yeah.
So Podman supports the hooks pre-start, post-start, and post-stop, right?
Yeah, and a few others as well. There's quite a few hooks.
Okay,
yeah.
But if you have those, so in the post-start, what you could do is kind of, instead of starting with formally implementing a CNI provider, you kind of say, okay, now I have internet connectivity, and my post-start will just set up the WireGuard inside the container.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. That's two.
Let him finish.
Yeah. And the nice thing here is that you can now, because if I understood you correct, you're only intending this to be a data center to data center overlay. You don't need someone from a coffee shop to be able to attach to that unless he's a network operator.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So basically what I got is a core three data centers with one relatively big server in each one. And there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 dangly bits in the rest of the world all over the place that access this, but they don't actually have to be part of that. They're not running containers that need this. They just connect to the network.
So why not do the following? Let the host handle the WireGuard and just don't set up a WireGuard inside the jails at all. You set on the hosts a WireGuard configuration with just point-to-multipoint WireGuard to all other servers. So that, because I'm hoping that all your servers have IPv4 or IPv6 with a reachable UDP port for WireGuard open. So that every server is expected to always be able to dial any other healthy server. If you can do that, you just either via hardwired IP port pairs or via host name port pairs, you configure this with an allowed IP range for each server, and then you can just have the guests inside of the containers rely on this network and this VPN service provided by the host to have their overlay tunnel, whatever form that takes. So, or you even don't add an overlay of tunneling unless you really need a shared Ethernet link. You can just rely on routing. You configure your hosts to be IP routers, and then you have routes in the host. You just do it with static routes in the easiest case. Your hosts act as routers, and you just have the guests use the default gateway, which is the host.
Yeah. And
route it, and the host will just say, "Oh, I'm not just a bridge, I'm also a router, not a problem. This packet is addressed to this other server. I will route it over the tunnel." If you want to be sure, you set up at least a stateless firewall so that you cannot accidentally leak that traffic if the VPN is unconfigured. But yeah, you don't have to push all of that logic into each container, and you don't need in your use case as you've described it, and I understand it. You don't need an automation fancy overlay network. You just need a normal set of a handful of tunnels, and because WireGuard can handle point to multi-point, you need one tunnel interface per server, per physical server, with all of the other servers defined as peers. That's about as basic as you can get, that it would handle all of what you described.
Doesn't that introduce those single point of failure? Then you've got this one server which is responsible for distributing the traffic, or have I misunderstood?
No, there's no single. Each one knows about all others. And you have point to multi-point behavior. So your routing table handles that.
The really nice thing about using the VXLAN setup is that you can move a container with the same IP from one node to another, and the surrounding tools like HA proxy, DNS don't need to be updated, and it's a lot. So containers don't move often, but when they do move, you want it just to work. And by having a VXLAN sort of set up, then these containers can just be restarted on a different node, and that is very, very nice attribute to have. I might be able to do this with NetBird as well. I haven't
Let him finish, then you go.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, instead use IPsec tunnel interfaces. So I have IPsec and a dynamic routing protocol, OSPF, for example, or BGP as IGP. And then you configure that, and you just have all your jails on your bridge or a loopback or an alias. It doesn't really matter. Alias on a loopback for all I care. And your something like Word or other routing daemons can be configured to just redistribute all connected interfaces with a certain pattern. So you would just take all of the IP addresses, redistribute them, the other routers would learn about it, and that works. You can also do it with WireGuard, but then you need one WireGuard tunnel per peer, which, unless you have thousands of servers, isn't a big problem. And now that you have one WireGuard tunnel per peer, you configure the allowed IP range to all IP addresses for the single peer, and then you can properly use dynamic routing with WireGuard. The problem is the bus factor of such a deployment, because whoever is supposed to maintain that needs both a solid understanding of routing and system administration.
Yeah. This is what I really like with ZeroTier. It was really, really simple. And for my general needs, performed enough. It's very, very nice. Yeah.
If ZeroTier works for you, you can get this behavior you want the following way. You with ZeroTier and low cost, you allow your servers in ZeroTier to be bridged. So normally ZeroTier restricts the
Yeah.
nodes to the MAC address assigned to them. If you allow them bridging, you should be able to just add the tab interface as a member to a bridge. And then you have ZeroTier as your bridge between all your servers.
I still then have to have a tap for every single container.
No. An e-pair.
Well, if I have an e-pair, then
you have a bridge with the VT something tab interface as the first member on the bridge, and then one e-pair per jail.
I think that kind of changes my security model a little bit. So every e-pair on the bridge would be able to talk to every other e-pair on that same bridge, plus whatever else is on the other side.
Yes, but you don't pay per network, you pay per node.
Yeah,
so you can have multiple networks in ZeroTier.
Yeah, it's not about
cost extra.
It's not about the expense. It's more about the. So you're saying I would use a separate. Every network produces another tap, a separate tap interface.
So you can have multiple bridges and multiple taps, one tap per bridge to connect them. And then, yeah. You're good.
I think the main constraint in all of this is going to be getting the stuff into podman.
Get the
no, you don't have to change anything on podman for that.
Well, I've still got all the plumbing to wire up. So here's a good example. I've got a 3-node database cluster, and they are allowed to talk to each other, but every other every other system can't talk directly to the database. They have to go through some sort of secure proxy to make sure they're authenticating. But the three, because otherwise anyone can talk directly to the database, and we don't want that.
Fine, not a problem.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure how that would work here.
So if you have three servers, each running one jail with a database replicated. Let's say you have some kind of database, some kind of, I don't know, 3 open ADAP servers in multi-master replication or whatever.
Yeah, it's CouchDB. So it's a 3-node CouchDB cluster, and they talk to each other.
So what you would do is you create a ZeroTier network. You add your jail hosts to that. That gives you a tab interface. You create a bridge. You add the tab interface to the bridge. And then you start adding just one podman jail per server to that bridge. It's a rather convoluted network deployment for a single jail. But if you have then multiple jails of the same sort on the server, you just add them to that, and now you just have to have some kind of router and firewall between the different VNET. Sorry, the different ZeroTier networks.
Can I step in real quick?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I'm also a network engineer, so this is all networking versus sysadmin stuff, right?
I'm not a network engineer, so
you end up having to become a network engineer when you start doing crazy stuff like this. So congratulations, you're now a network engineer. Have a chat with Lexi, because she's been working on bridge reachability rules. So the normal network engineering way you do this is either everyone's on the same network and a crap ton of filtering rules, or a couple of separate bridge networks where your secure proxy is on a separate, can be on 2 separate networks, and your databases are in a separate network that only the secure proxy can speak to. So you end up with 2 bridge interfaces and a bunch of stuff. But Lexi's also been working on being able to configure like bridge member reachability and a bunch of other stuff and VLANs and stuff inside the bridge. So because I think she's trying to do similar things to this, right?
So
And that way then
I'm
you can
pretty sure she's further ahead than me. I've been reading some of her commits and going,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, well I am because I've been reviewing her stuff, right? And I'm also a
Yeah.
network engineer, so this is all old hat to me.
Adrian,
Yo,
since you happen to have some deeper background in network, I have this idea I have not yet prototyped, which is if I have this kind of bridge with tunnels and I want to avoid forming loops, but spanning tree isn't a valid answer, and I need some kind of centralized control plane in user
uh-huh.
space. What I'm thinking is our bridge driver right now has the ability to kind of split ports into discovery and learning. Normally,
Yes.
your port is both discovery and learning. But if you have a tap interface as a member, which is a discovery but not a learning port,
Mm-hmm.
what then happens if an unknown destination packet comes in, it gets flooded to the discovery ports,
Mm-hmm.
which happens to be your tap interface.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to how Open vSwitch or something like that is supposed to work with, you then can just read the raw Ethernet frame in your control plane. Maybe you have something like an MQTT broker where all the MAC addresses are stored. You install the right forwarding entry into your bridge, and then because it's not a learning interface, you re-inject the red packet by writing it to the tap interface. The bridge doesn't learn because it's not a learning member. You're from your tap, and you just made the frame usable.
Right. So let's put this in a box and not talk about it in the jails call, because otherwise we'll be here forever.
Yeah, I'm okay with that actually. This
I'm
this
not
topic
because
comes
I also
up
got to
all
go. I'm
the
also at
time,
work.
every week.
But I
Every
think
go ahead.
so. If there's actual interest in software-defined networking planes in FreeBSD for this sort of stuff, let's set up something quick for that, right? Because this there's this is similar to what happens in the hardware switch network in the SDN world, where they basically take a hardware switch plane and then they turn off all of the learning that's done inside the switch, and they control the L2, L3, L4 mapping directly from userland. And I've been working with EtherSwitch stuff. I've actually been working on more recent EtherSwitch stuff on Intel platforms, and it's all the little cheap dinky stuff. But it's we have similar things there where you could just turn that off and have a software tap port like capture all the flooded frames and the learning frames and have it drive the forwarding L2, L3, L4 rules inside the switch chips, right? And I thought about this a couple weeks ago with Lexi. Is like, well, what if we did that to the bridge interface, where we actually could set up a bridge interface where it doesn't do any learning of its own. It only does forwarding with like a bunch of default rules, where we actually create a forwarding plane, a management plane separate in userland that controls a bridge interface for doing exactly what you said, right?
The problem is that there's so much legacy craft in our bridge driver.
It's okay. I've
did
got
a good job making it epoch aware and so on.
Yep.
But
He knows. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm painfully aware of our bridge driver, and unfortunately, I mean, yeah. Let's take this offline and let's write something down and let's have chat on IRC or something and figure something out with Lexi as well, because I know she's neck deep in trying to figure out how to clean that stuff up.
Where do you want to keep that conversation?
Huh?
Where do you want to have that conversation?
You're on IRC, right? Let's just talk about it on IRC and figure out some next steps, because it sounds like we've got the minimum. I think if we've got 3 or 4 people interested in this and a couple of people that want to write some code, I think we've met minimum viable product critical mass. So let's have a chat with Lexi and figure out where we want to do this. And if we want Michael to run a call, we want to actually
Just let me know.
in as another call topic, we could set it up with Lexi and have a specific networking SDN talk slot.
Let's do that. Let's steal the FreeBSD jail channel, because
absolutely.
That's a good start.
Okay, let's put it in the
FreeBSD. You're right. It is actually an SDN problem.
Yeah.
It's just I've been coming at from here's tools I know that might be the hammer I need,
right?
Rather than looking from the other end. Why don't we make our own hammer?
Yeah,
like that.
I love making hammers. I have an entire downstairs basement room
I
of
can
tools to
see the
make hammers.
background now. I've got
Yeah.
my mental picture of Adrian and IC now.
Oh no, you don't understand. Let me just clarify exactly how ridiculous this room is. Like, and that's half of those boxes are Wi-Fi and embedded things. And I've actually got a server there now specifically for doing FreeBSD work. One of those.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Oh, I muted you. Sorry. Please unmute. I'm stopping my share
fine.
because we can't.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I got plenty of-
repeat that. I'm stopping the share because then no one can see it if we do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, first things first. I mean, come on. Unless you
Yeah,
want to do a
but,
photo,
like,
you post.
I
Here we
can't
go.
show you this side of my desk because it's got Facebook related crap on it. But
Okay,
like,
that's fine.
I actually been building a rack full of FreeBSD things just to do switching and bridge stuff and like random jail building stuff because my kids are old enough now that I get more than 2 hours of sleep. So let's start an SDN chat and see if we can get some traction there.
So my single request there is please do not lose the good stuff on IRC. I know you might each individually have a nifty logger in your client of choice,
Yeah.
but please start either a Google Doc or a
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
of
yeah.
a thing and a
Yes.
thing to keep track of the gems like I'm trying to do here on this
Maybe,
log of this.
Until someone yells at us, maybe we should just abuse/repurpose the FreeBSD wiki to keep notes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure,
I do
whatever.
that as well.
I don't care what
Kind of
platform,
stay
just please do
around,
it.
So
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm gonna like poke me on IRC so I know where your IRC nicknames are. I'll poke Ivy about Lexi about it.
Are you on the?
I'm on the Discord as well.
But you're not on the FreeBSD Jails channel, right?
Not on libero.chat, but I can join that in a sec because I am on Libero.
Yeah, okay, then see you there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, having just brought up the topics like that come up every few minutes, every day lately? Thank you for the iguana pictures, Mark. Appreciate it.
I'm glad I randomly joined this meeting. It turns out it intersects with the SDN bridge stuff that we've been poking at. So good.
Your timing's perfect.
Yes.
Likewise, it
If you're
turns
in
out
Ottawa,
that
but this will do. You condensed it. Go ahead,
my
Dave.
problems. Yeah. I'm just saying, likewise, it turns out I've been asking the wrong questions and solving my problems. Yeah, who would have thought?
Dave, would you like the honors? I trust you know what I'm referring to.
Oh, I'm gonna go down and make sure my kids have gone to bed soon, and that sort of stuff. So
that's another way of putting it. That's another way of putting it. Jan, do you want the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was awesome.
If you're crazy enough to have made it this far.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Don't be sorry. This was great. Love it. Take care.
Thanks
See you
all.
soon.
Good job.
Okay. Yeah. Cheerio.